I would like to do a short video on focus groups for those of you doing focus groups. This just gives you added, it's not about the questions, which you've already thought about. This gives you added ideas and understandings of the dimension of doing focus groups. So just to give you a sense of the purpose of focus groups, you want to gather qualitative data for a couple of different purposes. So one is to do survey research. It helps you understand the variety of experiences that are out there in order to formulate better research questions, number one, and formulate better survey questions, number two. So for example, if you have a survey question with choices A, B, C, D around, let's see, around how students conceive of or how they use life skills in their lives, the language that students bring to the focus group will help you formulate what kinds of life skills you write down. So it really helps you create the wording of the survey questions. It also might help you obtain qualitative data to enrich quantitative survey data, so mixed methods. You also might some people end up testing survey questions in a focus group by asking folks about them. You also might do a focus group for basic qualitative research. It's really good for generating a discussion amongst a group of people around their perceptions, attitudes, and experiences. It also can inform any kind of subsequent data collection. So you can move from really broad from the focus group down to more narrow. The strengths of an individual interview versus a focus group interview. In an individual interview, there's less fear of judgment. There can be less issues with status that can happen within a group. The strengths of a focus group, the people generate more ideas together. So especially, if you get a group of teachers together, a lot of times they can bounce ideas off of each other. You can get a broad understanding from multiple perspectives. That can be hard to do with one interview. And it can help participants who are less likely to talk one-on-one. So younger students for sure can benefit from focus groups. 6th grade and below, I almost always do focus groups rather than one student. Now, the shortcomings of individual is that sometimes people feel uncomfortable one-on-one, just like we said. You're only getting one perspective. And sometimes people don't remember everything, whereas with a focus group, you can get them, back and forth remembering things. Now, shortcomings of focus groups is that participants can be unduly influenced by others, and you have to really facilitate for that. That political or status differences can be a real problem. And then finally, I'm sure you imagine this, people getting off topic or one person dominating the conversation. Now, one thing we can do about political or status differences is have a homogeneous focus group. So if you're talking about race, separate people by race. If you're talking to folks at a school setting, do a different focus group for admins and a different focus group for teachers, right? Because teachers probably won't say their truth with admins in the room. All right, so who would you do? You kind of want to aim for 4 to 12 people. 12 is the upper limit, 4 is generally the lower limit, although I have done focus groups with 2 or 3 people, depending on, what happens. They can generally run between 45 minutes and 2 hours. You don't want to go much below 45 minutes because if you have a lot of people and you want to hear from each of them, it takes a little while. And then think about the critical characteristics of the people you want, right? So we've talked about sampling, some theoretical sampling, right? Like what are the key groups that you want to talk to? And then just like I mentioned in the last slide, do we want to keep them separated, right? Do we want to interview admins separately from teachers, principals separately from admins at the district level? Do we want to interview, 3rd graders separately from 6th graders? These are some things to keep in mind. Where to meet can sometimes be an issue. At home institutions, people can feel comfortable, but sometimes they feel like they can't speak their truth. Public space, on the other hand, also has issues of confidentiality and also recording. A library room can often work, like some room that you can book, maybe at the university or at a district office can work. Getting folks to come can be problematic. Relationships can work very well. You can also trigger their professional responsibility. By coming to the interview, they are really contributing to their profession. You can talk about that. Sometimes it's nice to have a gift card or a drawing if you have the extra money to do that. You want to bring, if you're doing your dissertation, the IRB approval and consent form. Sometimes I bring a list of questions and pass it out to the participants, and I always bring food. Not like a whole dinner or anything, but some snacks, chocolate, strawberries, things like that. As you begin, you'll want to do a welcome, introductions. You want to go around the circle, and as they do that, you record their names and any pertinent information. And I often even make a map of where they are around the circle so that I can connect individual voices in the recording with people. Talk about the rules of, kind of what we're going to do, and talk about confidentiality, because even though you aren't going to release their name and what they're thinking, it's important that other folks respect confidentiality as well. And then talk about recording the focus group, and then of course ask if there are any questions. When you facilitate, as I mentioned, start with introductions. Something I found really helps is acknowledge that there will be different experiences across the room. It helps with this conformity that can happen in focus groups where people want to just confirm what someone else has said. State that you actually really want different experiences. You want people to have something that they bring to the table that differs from what other people have thought about or believe. As in any interview, I often will transition between topics. So I might state, okay, we just were talking about the professional learning opportunities at your school. I want to ask now about how you handle substitute teachers, right? So you help them transition in their own minds. And then once the discussion has kind of run its course, you can introduce a new question. In a focus group, there will often be quiet people who don't have anything to share. So you can say, hey, I haven't heard from so-and-so yet. Did you have anything you wanted to offer? You can also do a round robin if there's one or two people dominating the conversation. Definitely record. You may want to record on two things, a recorder and your phone and your computer, just in case one is lost. And then just with your notes, just take notes around, oh, I want to ask this follow-up question, things like that. You can also take notes around this person said this thing so that you can attribute different things to different people in the recording. Watch body language carefully. You could say something like, oh, Denise, I saw you shaking your head. Do you disagree with Lisa, or did you have a different experience than Lisa? And then be monitoring your own nonverbal cues. Make sure you're validating people across the room consistently. There can be some difficult ethics issues in focus groups. You should consider whether the questions will require participants to share sensitive information or things that are embarrassing or illegal. And if that's the case, you may want to do one-on-one interviews. There might be things they're not comfortable sharing. Again, one-on-one interviews. Participants are not necessarily bound to confidentiality, but you should ask them to respect confidentiality. When you bring up difficult topics, consider providing a scenario. So you might say something like, some people I've talked to have said that they have experienced racism from college faculty. Is that something you've ever experienced? So you're not leading them in that you're saying you have experienced this. Like, what Islamophobia have you experienced? You're saying some people might have experienced this. You're opening the door for that, and then you're asking them if they have. You might even tell a story about yourself. Like, I've experienced this before, and I'm wondering if you have. So you want to both, on one hand, leave it open for people not experiencing things, and at the same time provide them the comfort that they can talk about those things if they do. All right, that is the end of the focus group video. Just a few quick hints for you to arrange your focus group.